Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. We are here once again to wrestle with those topics that are on our hearts and minds, and we hope you'll join us in this conversation. But before we get any further into today's show, I want to introduce my tag team partners for today's conversation. I am joined by Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville UMC, as well as Pastor Jackie Ranieri from Clare UMC. And I try to serve as your host, Pastor Matt West from Marble Memorial UMC in Milan. Well, how are you both doing today?
Good.
Doing well, thank you. You?
That's good. Yeah, not too shabby. Can't complain. Not that anybody'd listen if I did. So it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Here would
listen for you.
I know you guys would, but it is another beautiful day in the neighborhood, though, despite what the weather forecast might say.
Yeah.
Guess we got a storm coming, huh?
Yeah. Down here, it's supposed to be rain followed by snow, so we'll
and some ice I hear too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's always fun.
Wouldn't be a Michigan winter if we didn't experience 2 to 3 seasons in a day or two. So.
And here I am up north, and it's like we've missed out on like all the storms. Like we've gotten an inch here, an inch there, but you guys have gotten plowed, and I'm like, we've got nothing.
We, thankfully we didn't get as much as they had predicted, but we got enough, but it just seems to come in waves. It's like
right.
We get some, it starts to mostly melt away, and then another batch comes, but. Life in Michigan. At least we don't have hurricanes or sharks or some of those. Yeah,
jellyfish, stingrays,
earthquakes.
Yeah. Right.
What is it? The Red Sea. Oh, that was always a pleasure. The Red Sea, where all the fish wash, all the dead fish wash up on the shore. Oh, that's really I don't know what I don't remember what that's called, but yeah, that wasn't pleasant. Especially living on the beach. Oh, that was horrible.
Well, my friends, this past weekend was the Super Bowl, in which former Detroit Lion Matthew Stafford got his Super Bowl ring finally. So speaking of the Super Bowl, what was your favorite Super Bowl commercial? If you watched the game, I guess you'd have to watch in order to be able to answer this question.
I love the commercial about the Paralympic, the brothers, and the one who had the eye. I was just like, that one was a tearjerker. That was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see them. Watch what they do. But yeah, to me that was like that one touched the heart. That was really a good.
Yeah, I like the bringing back of the E-Trade baby.
Yeah.
I thought those were hilarious when they first came out. So I'm anxious to see how they update that.
Evolve it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Let me grab my onesies.
Yes.
Gosh, just from a humorous standpoint as well, I like the Amazon Alexa commercial with Scarlett Johansson and Colin Jost, her husband.
Yeah.
Read your mind. That was pretty good.
I thought the Dr. Evil one was funny too.
Yeah.
Yes, that was yeah.
Well, the follow-up question to that is we're talking about the Super Bowl is what was your favorite storyline from the Super Bowl?
Oh my gosh. I think what's that?
The storyline?
For me, there were several. First and foremost, I think the Matt Stafford story was just great. Especially for those of us in the Detroit area in Michigan who watched him play for so long. And I think as a fan, you had to kind of appreciate, at least when he was here, the effort he always put in. He was on some bad teams. He was on some okay teams. And I think all of us kind of knew that he was, better than the team was showing.
Right.
I think for him to be able to go somewhere and perform at that level and kind of cap off, a career for him, I think it was well earned, well deserved. I think too there was just some interesting storylines with a couple of the other Rams players who were kind of at the end of their career, Aaron Donald and Andrew Whitworth, kind of capping off their careers as well. And so I think there's always those kind of really human parts of that are interesting too, at least for me. I think the whole and Andrew Whitworth story that came out during the week, as far as him winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year, I think was a great testament to who he is, and I think those kind of things need to be highlighted more in sport. So yeah.
I thought I can't remember his name, but the wide receiver whose wife went into labor during the game, so afterwards he had to run out. And I saw a video yesterday where he was, starting to celebrate with his kids on the field after the game, and I'm sure one of the assistants or what for the Rams came out and was like, "Your wife's having a baby." Yeah. And the kids are like, "Why we gotta go, Daddy?" He's like, "Mom's having a baby. We gotta go." Yeah. And then to see him running out to be with his wife. So I mean, what a day to win the Super Bowl and then the birth of a child. I mean, I thought that was a pretty incredible storyline for the day. So yeah, good stuff. I mean, of course, big talk of the game wasn't so much the game itself, but the halftime show, which, I'm a Gen X, so I appreciate it. Love me some Dre and Snoop and, Eminem being a Michigan native. So, it was, I thought it was a good show.
I thought it was a good show too. And I thought it was fairly tame compared to some of the other halftime shows in the past. It was high energy and man, it's just, when Dre popped up in the very beginning out behind the piano, I was like, man, he's looking a little bit, it's Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like an older, mature Dr. Dre.
And I saw something where, before, during the week, somebody asked him like, can we expect some surprises or what? And I think, part of what he was alluding to is just the incorporation of other Black artists as part of, aside from the big names that were a part of that, all the dancers and musicians and other people that were incorporated into that show to display their talents. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool, as well. Of course, I saw this funny TikTok yesterday where this guy, he's like, the new, what do you call it? I don't know. He gave it a name, but he's like, this new diet really sucks. And so he like opens up the fridge and there's 50 Cent hanging upside down going, no, no, no. And then everything else, through the video he opens up, there's, 50 Cent hanging upside down telling him no, no, no. And so like, this new diet really sucks.
Someone point out during our Bible study yesterday about the halftime show, and one of the couples who was there, their son had emailed them about some of the unknown, I guess, some of the background stuff on some of those performers was like, Snoop Dogg has been very philanthropic in his giving with providing football uniforms and all kinds of equipment for, leagues in his area. Mary J. Blige obviously had a commercial before the Super Bowl promoting breast cancer awareness and screenings. And, Eminem's daughter graduated from the University of Michigan, I think as a valedictorian a couple of years. So I think it's neat to see, again, some of these behind the scenes stories or subplots of these artists who we've grown up with and yet are still doing things. Dr. Dre is his headphone company is global as well. So it's not just always about the music. There's also an area of where they give back and where they serve too, which is kind of neat to point out.
Yeah,
and that is a good point. To know, they have matured. This isn't just what they bring out on stage. Isn't what really who they are. And there is a little backstory behind the curtain, as you all say. And
well, and some people, like had trouble with. I don't know if it was Dre or who made the statement that, hip hop has been a part of the NFL, or, they're kind of intertwined in some ways. And people are like, look at when NWA was big, and the Raiders and, it certainly, I mean, there are a number of connections between both of those worlds that it's, this is like the first and what is it? This was Super Bowl 56, like the first real like hip hop rap, halftime performance.
Right.
I thought it was great, but I'm also from that generation that grew up listening to that. So
right.
I'm one of them. Well, also this week, the day after the Super Bowl, we celebrated Valentine's Day. And so Valentine's Day may be originally linked to a violent Roman festival called, I'm not even going to pronounce that. But every year from February 13th to the 15th, the streets of Rome erupted in a riotous, alcohol-fueled, frenzied festival. The men of the city would begin by sacrificing goats and dogs as part of a ritual designed to purify society and boost fertility among the women of the city.
Sounds like it should have been more Super Bowl than Valentine.
Yeah.
Much later in the 5th century, there was a pope that wrote a scathing critique of the festival, banning it from the city entirely. He replaced the festival, again, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but with the Christian feast of St. Valentine. This liturgical feast was designed to honor one or possibly two young men named Valentinus, who were murdered by the Roman authorities in the 3rd century after they refused to give up their Christian faith. So after all that, the question is, how do these origins explain our current observance of St. Valentine's Day?
I don't think they do.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Right. I don't know how we've gone from, honoring a martyred saint or a martyred Christian to the expectation of gifts and chocolates and flowers. And I mean, is it sacrificial love? Well, I don't know. I think it's a stretch, but.
Well, I certainly am glad that we have kind of went from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of, instead of sacrificing goats and dogs, that we've gone to chocolates and flowers. Hey, honey, I love you. What's that noise? Don't worry, I'm just sacrificing the goat.
To show my love for you. Yeah, I agree with
your
that.
Fertility, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's put a day aside for love. It's like, okay, and I guess maybe it's a Hallmark thing. I don't know. It's just a way to get extra, or flower shops and that. So I do appreciate the chocolates and the flowers. I will say that, but it's not something that I don't know. I think if we're gonna show our love to one another, we need to do it every day, not just on one celebrated holiday.
Well, and especially as Christians, I did a devotional video this week where I talked about the same thing in terms of, why is it that we put so much energy into one day or use it as a day to make up for all the other days during the year that we don't show our love, that it's like, oh, this is my chance to show you how much I really love you, because it's Valentine's Day. Where why aren't we putting that much effort every day, into those that we love? So yeah, but that was, a lot of pre-information for a question that I don't know. Maybe there's somebody out there, a historian or something, that can make that connection for us, but I don't have anything. Well, moving on then. Missouri Governor Mike Parson said last week that he would only nominate a state health director who shared his Christian values. First of all, I can't even begin to imagine to do these jobs if you don't have faith, Parsons said in a 2017 interview. I mean, if you're not a believer, there's no way, I believe, you can be a truly effective leader, because when you are in this arena, you are a leader. And to make decisions without faith, to me, would be impossible. I don't know how you make the decision and how you're going to affect the future if you don't have belief and faith. Discuss this view of an elected official. Leaders and faith. Do they go together? Is faith a must?
I mean, yes, faith is important, but I don't know.
But for a government leader?
Right. But I think the way he went about it, I don't agree with. That's what gives Christians a bad name. Oh, they just want us to believe what they believe and so forth. And, I go back to my little soapbox of, we have to show it by action, not by pounding it in everybody. You got to be faithful. You got to do this. You got to do that. I think people see that through us, through our actions. Yes, through our words, but not condemning, but through our words as a believer and how we treat people and how we handle situations. And I think that's what people admire more than, if you want to be where I'm at, you have to be a believer. You have to have my kind of faith in that. To me, it just sounds, I don't know, it's demeaning.
Well, I think it creates, controversy in the way that how can you be an impartial leader?
Yep.
If you only want people who align with your beliefs or your faith, how can you say you speak for all the people that you're representing if you're telling them that, anybody who works for me or anybody who, expects me to do this has to believe what I believe.
Right.
That's where I think it's certainly, mucky waters in terms of, government officials being like, oh, well, the only way you can do this job is if you have faith or you share my Christian values.
Right.
If we, a couple of things, I think when you say that this, a government leader or any leader has to have a Christian faith, I think you become very obviously exclusionary of the leaders who are Jewish, who might be Muslim, who might be Buddhist, who are effective in their areas of expertise, whether it is in, government work, business, wherever else. Because if we look across the board at the major religions of the world, they all have very similar tenets and core values when it comes to things like kindness and peace and truth and justice. And so I think to say that Christianity has the market cornered on values or ethics, it's not something I believe in.
Or to say that you could only be an effective leader if
you're a Christian,
you're a believer.
Right.
We've seen, Christians, whether they're in government leadership, church leadership, whatever, we've seen how awful they can fail. We've seen how hurtful their mistakes can be, either in a financial way, in a moral way, in a personal way. I mean, we could spend hours talking about the moral failures of so-called Christian leaders across the globe. Again, so to say that we as Christians have that market cornered I just don't believe it. I think you need to have faith to be a good leader. I don't think it has to be just a Christian faith. Again,
right.
I think you could look at history and say there have been effective Jewish leaders. There have been effective Muslim leaders.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think, the thing about this particular discussion here is, although, we've shared what we've shared in terms of like kind of questioning what this governor is saying, but at the same time, voters take into account, what your, what denomination you might be affiliated with, or certainly, hold your religious views in terms of determining whether they could vote for you or not, so I mean, it's another form of division, and the fact that it's like, wow, they need to be a good old Baptist boy if I'm going to vote for them. And then there's people that are like, well, how can you be impartial if, you're imposing your religious beliefs on us? So, I mean, it's interesting that, we seem to certainly be in the idea that, yes, we have to, faith is important, but in terms of, Christian values or what that can get in the way, but yet, on the other hand, we have people that, will determine who they're voting for based on maybe where a candidate stands on some of those thoughts.
Right.
Yeah, politics, gotta love them, especially when you throw in some Christianity. So, well, on February 13th of 1923, the New York Renaissance, the first all-black professional black team, basketball team, first all-black professional basketball team is organized. The Renaissance, commonly called the Wrens, become one of the dominant teams of the 1920s and 30s. The team's founder was Robert L. Douglas, whose primary objective was to give New York City's male black athletes opportunities to better themselves. In February of 1923, Douglas struck an agreement with William Roach, a Harlem-based real estate developer who owned the new Renaissance Ballroom and Casino, and the Wrens were born. With black players barred from professional basketball leagues, the Wrens barnstormed throughout the country, often competing against all-white teams. They played their last game in 1949. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar noted, "It's important that we honor those pioneers who made this billion-dollar industry possible." Were you aware of this team? And discuss how this history is or isn't featured in profiles of basketball history. My guess is this is tying into Black History Month. Don't, other than it being something that happened in February, I don't see a connection to Valentine's Day, but since that's where the conversation started. But were any of you aware of this particular team? I was not
aware.
I remember seeing something on like the History Channel. I mean, it was during, of course, the February Black History Month, and it was a few years ago that they did a special on it or something like that. And I had watched it actually with my dad, but I don't remember anything really more than just hearing about it, because they did the series with the basketball, then with the baseball, and so forth. So it was just one of those, specials that they had there. So is it something like if somebody would have asked me on the street, "Hey, do you remember the Wrens?" Probably not, but yeah, I mean, I heard something, but I don't know that much.
So why do you think that this story or this history of this team isn't featured in the profiles of basketball history?
I think one, because if we look comparatively to the other major league sports, football and baseball, hockey, while I love hockey, doesn't get as much national attention as the other ones do. I don't think the NBA gets as much national attention on that kind of level as Major League Baseball and football does. So I think there's a little bit of a lack of interest on NBA history. I think it's probably just been a story that no one has wanted to tell, or maybe again there hasn't been an audience. I think it's important that it's told. And I know before the Super Bowl, the NFL honored some of the first black NFL players. Obviously, if you've been around baseball for a while, the Negro Leagues are always honored year in and year out. And there's, we know that the story of Jackie Robinson and the color barrier. I think basketball, maybe there was an assumption wrongly on us that African Americans have always been involved in basketball. That may be a harsh judgment to assume. But I think it's worthy of that story being shared.
Well, I had a good friend that was a history teacher, and he would always say, the history books are always written by the winners, and so I think there are certainly those that kind of dictate the history that we hear and know.
Right.
And the unfortunate part is, one, that we only celebrate Black History 1 month a year, but there's so many unknown stories. I mean, I watched a video the other day about many inventions that we know and use that were actually invented by Black people. And so it's like, but nobody knows that.
Right.
Like just kind of got lost in the shuffle. Nobody really, the history writers chose to maybe leave that out. There's certainly a lot of cause for questioning, why don't we know about these things? And of course, that could lead to a whole other conversation in, today's world, and the fact that, one of the hot debates right now is critical race theory in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we've got people who are trying to dictate what history we hear and don't hear, which is unfortunate, because there's a lot of beautiful history out there that we're missing, So yeah, I understand, Curtis's point, I would probably agree with that. I just don't think there's that many people digging into, professional basketball history, or it just doesn't seem to be, as noted as he pointed out with some of the other sports. But I think just overall in general, there is a lot of history, of a culture and of people that we've been deprived. And then when you find out, you're like, wow, because who knows? I mean, this team could have, had one of those, closed door games against a professional basketball team and kicked their butt, and nobody knows about it because nobody wants to write about this team and their history.
Right.
But, and perhaps they were overshadowed a bit by the other black team from Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was at a time too, where, as it pointed out, I mean, it just, they weren't welcome into the professional leagues at that time.
Yeah.
And that's, some other stories I've seen, where integration of, black students and, into college basketball or just basketball in general, that, it's sad and disheartening, but, there is history there. But I mean, this was in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah. Right.
And, honestly, I don't know if I could even name a basketball player from before 1960.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and I played basketball growing up and in through high school. Whereas we could all probably name baseball players, football players, I can name hockey players from the 20s and 30s probably.
Right.
But and baseball players, but basketball, I would draw a blank.
Right. You don't see too many people gathering to go watch basketball. I mean, might be an excuse to go have a beer together, but you don't hear of everybody like, hey, let's go watch this game, meet you at such and such a restaurant. And I mean, I remember living in Florida, and there was a group from the hotel. It was like every Sunday we met at the same place, and, we had dinner together, watched the game together. And it was, it was exciting times, but we never did it during basketball season. We didn't,
Well, and it doesn't help, unlike the Super Bowl, which is one game, the NBA Finals is, a best of 7 series. So, I mean, it could, could be 4 games, could be 7 games, and it's like, well, some people don't. Though,
we all mostly know the Final Four, and that's what the college.
Right.
That's popular. People will gather for that, but not.
Yeah.
And you're right. It just doesn't. And women, I mean, poor women. I mean, we've had some great women's basketball teams, and it goes by the wayside. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And, there's some great female basketball players out there.
Well, and I think about, as we were talking earlier about, showing our love beyond Valentine's Day, I think we continue to do a disservice to the other cultures within our, within our own country or even the world or what, when we don't share the love with them. I mean, you can say, okay, well, why aren't we sharing this history? Well, why aren't we sharing our love with them?
Right.
Sharing their history would be a way of showing our love to them or what, but yet, we just like, okay, here's a month.
Right.
Enjoy.
The shortest month of the whole year too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our final discussion point today says, this is a quote. It says, in the lynching era, between 1880 and 1940, white Christians lynched nearly 5,000 black men and women in a manner with obvious echoes of the Roman crucifixion of Jesus. Yet these Christians did not see the irony or contradiction in their actions. And that quote was from James H. Cone from The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And they ask us to discuss this particular quote from him. So, the connection, I guess, or the discussion being, here are white Christians lynching black men and women. Mm-hmm. Which, the comparison was made to the crucifixion of Jesus, but this group of people didn't see basically what the problem was.
It's, I have to wonder if it was obviously blinded by rage, anger, whatever, ignorance, eye for an eye type justice. I'll share that. My grandmother, when she was a young child growing up in Indiana, was witness to a lynching. The small town she lived in, there was a black man who had been accused of having sex with a white woman from the next town. And the locals went and found the man and arrested him, tried him, and executed him all in one day. That was their form of justice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there were Christians involved in that.
Unfortunately, yes.
That's the stain of the stain of our history as this nation, is the things that we have done in the name of God. And we're not alone. There's other countries who have done the same atrocities.
Right.
Still carry that stain with us. It's, to say that it's not happening anymore would be wrong as well. I mean, a government that's founded supposedly on Christian values that still executes people,
I think, you're onto something in terms of, it being maybe driven by anger.
Mm-hmm.
I think back, when I was younger, just saying some dumb things, that were certainly racist. But I think they weren't, when I did it, a lot of times it was out of anger, or frustration with the situation, as opposed to, but that was also at a time when I really wasn't involved in the church and was, away from the church. And I wouldn't, and I would say my relationship wasn't the strongest with God, but now, having grown up, matured in a lot of ways, educated myself more so before speaking on certain things. And I still don't have it all figured out, but I certainly am slow to speak and try to show empathy and love for a situation that I can't fully understand, being a white male. I benefit from white privilege, and so to try and understand where this group of so-called Christians was coming from, other than, again, maybe chalking it up to acting out of anger, but at the same time, like, as a Christian, how do you deem yourself better than another group of people that you would allow yourself to believe like these actions are okay and not see the problem with it? Like, well, I'm superior to them. They wrong me. I'm going to hang them. And I don't see a problem with it. I have a hard time comprehending that, but it's a very troubling thing that is a part of our history, and therefore, like, why aren't we teaching it so that we can learn from our mistakes? Instead, we want to cover it up and hide it and act as if like it didn't happen, but yet nearly 5,000 people lost their lives because of a group's actions and them not seeing the problem with it. that's a tough pill to swallow.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I mean, how do you reconcile that with, against your faith that says thou shalt not kill?
Right.
With a faith that says vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's the Lord's vengeance. It's not us who should be vengeful.
Right.
Vengeance is not Christian. Vengeance is not Jewish. If we get back to the original question, one of the original questions about, a leader having faith, I think there are leaders in our country who have no faith, who have a better moral ground sometimes than people of faith. And what does that say about us?
It's true. Very true. That's a hard one. It's just hard, but just because it's heartbreaking. It's just like you said, we try to cover it up and make ourselves look better, but we're not. It's just a sad situation. And I agree. We need to hear it. How can we make ourselves better? How can we better ourselves? How can we better our love toward each other? We have,
Well, yeah, because I mean, this is referencing a time period from the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And here it is 2022.
Yeah.
And we still have Christian groups that are persecuting other groups and don't see an issue. And hopefully at some point they, I don't know, mature enough in their faith or their beliefs to understand that what they did was wrong and hopefully apologize. But it's like, why can't we pause before we act so that we don't have to go back later and apologize? And that's the difficulty of this and one of the, just even within our own denomination. For a number of years, that was, race was a big thing, in terms of the division of the Methodist Church throughout the years. It was a lot of times based on some sort of race issue or, segregation or something that caused a division throughout the church, and then, at some point, finally, the ding ding light comes on and goes, gosh, you know what? We weren't very Christian. We wronged you. We're sorry. But yet that doesn't make up for the years that they felt like we were just being jerks to them. It's like, thank you. I appreciate you finally apologizing, but how many more times are we going to do this?
Right.
Or when are other Christians going to speak up against, this and point it out? I mean, calling people out just because, we may all be Christians or what, it doesn't mean that we can't call each other out or hold each other accountable. And it just, I don't know. I struggle a lot of times with these kinds of conversations because I know it's hard being, a white male to, and try to talk, but I also, I'm trying to convey my empathy for something that even though I might not have been directly involved, I'm involved in some way,
right.
But
I saw a TikTok, I think it was yesterday or Monday, from someone I follow on there who's in this process of deconstructing their faith, which I think would be a great topic to discuss one day. But she was saying about the halftime show that if you were a white person who was excited about the halftime show, was, really enjoyed it, but you're not actively supporting the causes of Black people in this country, then you're just kind of a hypocrite. And it got me to think about when we see a show like that and some of the people who criticize it, who this and that, are they criticizing it because it showcased 5 or 6 very successful Black performers? And I had to wonder that if that was the genesis of their dislike, because it's giving a platform to these performers who are incredibly gifted and incredibly successful, but look very different from the three of us, or the group that we're talking with, whatever it might be.
I didn't care for the music. It just isn't my music. It wasn't my thing, but I admire the artists. I mean, I think they're great artists. It's just I didn't grow up in that era of music. That just wasn't my thing. But I love Prince. I love
right.
Commodores. I mean, I had all those kinds of things in there. So to me, it wasn't a matter of race by any means, but it was a matter of this wasn't my genre of music. I never, Salt and Pepper. Okay, I like them. It was just kind of
Run DMC you would have gotten into.
See, that I would have gotten into. I love the commercial. That was I forgot. That was a commercial I did love with the jungle and that music coming out. That was that was my theme. So I love that song. But yeah, it just wasn't, it was on. It was like, okay, whatever. But I didn't get excited about it. And again, it was my age or whatever. But I think all of those artists are Mary J. Blige. I think just, she doesn't, you don't hear too much about her being spoke about the Super Bowl, but I think she's an awesome. I mean, there's so many. Snoop Dogg, yes, and I even love how he's with Martha Stewart now. Yeah. I think their commercials are awesome. I think working together is just what a great thing to show. I think that it's important, that we see that human side of them. But as far as artists, would I go see a Snoop Dogg concert? No, I mean, just not my thing. But to me, it was nothing racist. But I get your point, and I agree with you. Maybe it was in some aspects that could have been, That isn't what we do. But yeah, I mean,
Well, I think in some of our conversation, why did it take 56 Super Bowls before we had a hip hop rap main act for the halftime show?
Right. Well, I think because there's a perception that it's going to be vulgar, it's going to be lewd, it's going to be inappropriate. I mean,
but who makes that decision?
Right. I mean, when you had well, the NFL would be the ones who are making the decision. Again, you have to remember too, everything the NFL does is to target their target audience.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Same with the advertising. I mean, they have an audience, market that they're looking to share or trying to target, and that's exactly what they're doing. So,
and then I mean, I may be wrong, and I apologize if I am, but despite their efforts to be more diverse, there's a lot of white people making decisions in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of assumptions that are made. It's like the year Janet Jackson did the halftime show. Well, then the assumption is, we have another act like that, we're going to have the same kind of problem. So no, we'll bring in, people that are not really relevant anymore, but we know will be safe so that our audience isn't offended or
right.
Because I certainly saw a lot of different reactions to that halftime show, where it was like certainly those in my generation that were like, loved it. One of the best, and then I saw people that were like, what the heck was that? That was garbage. That's what they call entertainment. That's a halftime show. But different generation,
I had to laugh. I mean, I had cousins that are way older. I wouldn't say way older, but they're older than I am. And they loved it. They just thought that was the bomb. They just thought, oh my gosh, what a great halftime show. Yeah. And it just, like I said, it just depends what your music is. If it would have been, Bruno Mars did it a few years ago. I loved it. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing ever, blah, blah, blah. Who is he kind of thing. I love Bruno Mars. I think great musician, great talent. Awesome. But and I love the Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake. I mean, they really, besides what happened, but they really put on a great performance. And but unfortunately we are where we are. And
I will give a shout out to my wife because she posted a meme yesterday that I thought was just great and made me laugh. But it was a picture of the halftime show, and it says, if you were excited about the halftime show, you should really be checking into life insurance. Mind you, my wife sells life insurance, so but I just thought it was hilarious where it's like, she had a couple people comment that was like, dang, like, yeah, all right.
That's cute.
Well, my friends, I thank you for joining me today for our conversation. We covered a lot from something that we thought we weren't sure what we'd be able to discuss to, I think, covering quite a bit. And I think it was a wonderful conversation. But certainly would encourage those of you who are watching Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit to share your thoughts with us. We want to know what you hear or what you think, or did this spark a conversation within your own house? But any final thoughts before we say goodbye to our audience?
I think just be willing to experience new things, to learn more, to broaden our sense of understanding about cultures beyond our own. And read those tough stories of history. Listen to them.
Mm-hmm. And I'll even add to that, just because not just 1 month, but throughout a whole year, spend that time. Educate our children.
Yes.
Well, a phrase I've used a few times this week, spread the love. Spread the love. That's what I think a lot of it boils down to. Well, thank you. And thank you for those that are watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And until we meet next time, peace be with you.
Peace out.